Hey sports fans, Janine here for Tiger Talk Thursday. We are lucky to have, I don't want to butcher his name, but Ettore Lattanzio with us. I'm going to give you a little bit of his bio, but for those of you that are joining us, or if you haven't tuned into any of the episodes, this is transitioning to life after sports, a topic that I'm very passionate about. Unfortunately, I know some athletes who have struggled in silence after leaving their professional career. It happens to all of us, even young athletes that are in high school ages that I'm talking to, it happens to us all. So creating a space where we can share our stories and letting the community know that you are supported and you're not alone in what you're going through. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having
me. I'm just going to start off by giving you a little bit of his bio. He was born, so I'm going to call him E.T. Today. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you got it. You got it. It's a tongue twister.
So E.T. was born in the Ottawa region. He began his playing career at the age of 12 with the Nepean Redskins. They're now called the Eagles in the NCAFA. After a few seasons, he joined the Myers Riders varsity team to play in the OVFL. After having a lot of success in the league, he was able to compete on the national level for Team Ontario. After high school, he went to Ottawa U and joined the GG's football team. And over the course of 5 seasons, he set the school sack record and won, is it JP?
The JP Metras Award.
Yeah, JP Metras Award as Canada's best lineman. From there, he entered the draft and was selected by Winnipeg in the 5th round. He made it through his first CFL camp only to be cut a week later, after which he joined the Redblacks. Thank you, Winnipeg. And was able to play 5 seasons and win a Grey Cup in 2016. He retired in 2021, having played his last season in 2019 and missing the 2020 season due to the pandemic cancellation. He is now a realtor, a father of 2, and has been adjusting to life after football ever since.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Let's start off. What's amazing to me is when you think of athletes and their playing career is kind of it feels like rejection, but it's really a redirection.
Yeah.
And when I was reading your story, I thought about that when I saw that you got cut by Winnipeg, and what a blessing for us here in Ottawa. Yeah. And who's to say that you would have ever won a Grey Cup?
I know.
Right? So let's go back to a little bit of your younger years. Were you always a mentally strong athlete, or talk to me about that?
You know what? It's funny. I didn't come from like a big sports family or a team sports family. My dad was very much so into weightlifting, loved martial arts and boxing. Those were sort of his pastimes. Cool. I was fortunate that he kind of took me under his wing and got me into the gym early. And I started late. Like 12 is actually pretty late for football. You
started football at 12?
Yeah, it's very late for football.
Yeah.
Like most kids start when they're 6, maybe 7.
Well, I was actually ringette until almost like 14. I switched to hockey at 15 and then went to UNH. Yeah, so amazing.
I know. So I was quite late, and the reason I got into it was I played soccer like every good Italian boy. You know, you rite of passage, you got to play soccer. So, but I was terrible. I was bigger and knocking kids over.
Yeah, you don't seem like you have the body type for soccer.
Not at all. I'm not eloquent at all. So one of my neighbors had, a couple of my neighbors had suggested to my parents to put him into football, and they were worried that I was going to get hurt, and they said, no, he will hurt people. And so eventually they were convinced. They put me in, and it sort of, just went from there.
So you kind of just went in it blind.
Very blind.
Were you excited? Were you nervous?
I was excited and nervous. Of course, I had no idea. I never played. I didn't watch football growing up, and I didn't have a team, so there was no affinity to the sport in any regard. But the violence of it was something that appealed to me. So it took,
the violence of it.
It took a little bit of time to get used to it, But after my first season, once I figured out the basics and which direction I'm going and who's on offense, who's on defense, it was fine.
Okay, let's talk about, you get drafted to Winnipeg and then you're cut.
Yeah.
I imagine that transition took a toll on you. How did you feel as an athlete, and what was that experience like? If you could put yourself back in that body, can we go there?
Yeah, so draft day was, obviously it's very exciting. You're nervous, you're excited. It's what you've worked your entire life for to get to that.
Or some since 12.
Yeah, or some since 12. Yeah, exactly. So basically, I only really thought I was going to go pro around my 3rd year at UOttawa, where I realized I'm good enough. I can actually make this leap, or at least have an opportunity to. So the day of the draft, I got the call and I got picked by Winnipeg, but it was a bit of a weird experience because when I got the call, they basically said, hey, we're going to draft you as a fullback.
You're a defensive lineman.
I'm a defensive lineman.
Interesting.
Yeah. And of all so during the process, at the combine, you have interviews, right? And usually the people who are of most interest will have the most interviews. So of the 9 teams, I was interviewed by 6. Winnipeg wasn't one of them. So I had no idea I was on the radar. So that was a bit of a shock. But I mean, what am I going to say? No. Yeah. So when they gave me a call and they're like, "How do you feel about us drafting you as a fullback?" And I was like, "Oh, feel great, right? Like cool. Like I just wanted to play." Yeah. So, but for me, it was a bit of a surreal experience because I had never actually left Ottawa. Right, on a long-term basis. I was a homeboy. I did try to get down south, but just didn't work out for me. So I stuck home. So it was a big adjustment. Not only am I going to a new city and playing at the next level,
you're playing a new position.
New position, right? So that was very nerve-wracking. And then, of course, making the cut because I made it through camp, but then they cut me right after.
Okay. And that in that new position that you'd never played.
And I never played it. And there was a period during the camp where I got transitioned back to defensive line because they were having some injuries. Okay. And so they needed someone who actually had experience to go and fill in. And the thing with, I'm assuming this is the case for most team sports, you have your rookie camp. It's like 2 or 3 days. Rookies get there first. They learn, the play. So they're a little bit ahead of the vets because when vets come, it's quick, right? Yeah. And as soon as the vets do come, you don't get any reps. So you go from getting maybe 10 to 15 snaps in a practice, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you're sharing it with a bunch of other guys.
There's how many guys are on a football team?
Well, during camp, it could be like 100 people, right? So but when the vets come, you might get 1, maybe 2 if you're lucky. So you're you have to do everything mentally. It's all mental reps. So when doing it at the top level, it was a big eye opener. Yeah. So they put me back on.
Did you feel nervous?
Oh my gosh,
were you accepting of the new challenge?
I was accepting of it, but I was nervous because it's literally, people think, well, how is it so different? If you know the sport, it's a completely different language. Like offense and defense is not the same in any capacity. Just in terms of how it's like the communicated plays and everything. Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily, it didn't suit my mindset, I guess. Yeah. But I'm not going to not try. I did the best I could. So.
It's funny, when I played hockey, I got switched to defense because they needed a strong backward skater. And the first month, I hated it. Yeah. But I ended up becoming a much better player because of it. But the diversity. Okay, so you're going through the camp. You're released. Are you relieved to go home? To mom and dad? That comfort zone a little bit? Or?
Yeah, you know what? I was really fortunate and I was happy that I got away. And I was preparing myself to be there for at least 6 months, right? So I already had a lease.
Oh no!
Everything was ready to go. We were ready to kind of make that move. I had my roommate picked out. It was set in stone. And then I'm like, hey, sorry, bro, you're gonna have to find another roommate.
Oh no,
we're gone. So anyhow, I was relieved in the sense that I'm getting to go home. I'm going to see my girlfriend, now my wife. So of course there were certain things that I was looking forward to, but I was also pretty dejected and upset about not being on the team anymore. So the first thing I did is I called my agent when I got the news and just said, hey, like what's, this is what happened. He asked me, what do I want to do? Because a lot of guys, they'll quit. There's a lot of guys that'll get cut and they just say, you know what, I'm
That's
done.
Proactive of you. Did you are you kind of that go-getter? Because that's a pretty, some people will go more into like a self-loathing, feeling sorry for themselves headspace, but that's kind of, I love that. So you kind of just went, okay, what's next? Like you were just used to, let's just see what else we can do.
Who else is out there? And I mean, during camp, everyone's cutting people, releasing guys. Yeah. Guys get injured, so they need bodies to fill slots. So I just called them and said, hey, is Ottawa still interested? Now, the funny thing about this was Ottawa was the next pick after me. Okay. So I got picked just before Ottawa, and they told me I basically said, well, listen, let me make some calls. And as soon as I got on the plane and touched down in Ottawa, I got off and my airplane mode was turned off. I got a message from him saying, you have an interview tomorrow. So I went and met with them.
So no time to feel bad for yourself.
No. I was only pretty much out of work for a week.
Okay.
So that was fortunate.
That's beneficial to athletes when they're transitioning to still have that, be able to transition. Here, come over. We're just missing you so we're in the frame. That's okay. That's what a blessing to have that quick turnaround because you can get into that headspace. So I imagine you play 5 years. 2016, you win a Grey Cup. Yep. Like, way to have that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Obviously, the pandemic hits. That's going to really mess with you mentally because were you ready to leave before the pandemic? Like, you played in 2019. You left in 2021, but was that a forced retirement kind of because of the pandemic?
Combination. I was pretty peeved off. I wanted to play at least one more year because 2019 was such a bad year. I had a good season overall individually, but I mean as a whole, the team and the organization was just not a good year. And I didn't exactly have a good working relationship with one of the people, I would say, coaches,
Yeah.
not naming names, but
Let's just be honest.
It wasn't,
Yeah,
I just
it
didn't
happens.
feel like I was being utilized to my abilities
Got
and
it.
strengths, and there was a lot of conflict there. So I was sort of looking forward to a fresh start, a fresh, slate.
That's an interesting perspective, though, because a lot of athletes will go through this. I mean, in a perfect world, we would love to get along with everyone. But how do athletes show up, or they don't show up in peak performance when they're not having that relationship with the coach? Like, did that really eat at you mentally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm not the only one. I would say there's a fair amount of people that felt the same.
Got it.
But it's like anyone who's played on a team in any sort of team sport. Some players take more lumps than others when it comes to favoritism or just the relationship with this particular coach. It could be a positional coach, it could be the head coach, whoever it may be. Unfortunately, I'm fortunate that I haven't had that issue a lot in my career. I've always had great relationships.
But you're a pretty positive guy, so I'm sure you kind of look for,
and I've always vibed well with my coaches, and so, but that rubbed me the wrong way, and I was really looking forward to starting fresh, and then when the pandemic hit, I got a new career. I was already getting ready for that transition.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Had you had your eye on real estate while you were playing as kind of a backup, or was it more forced upon you and you didn't really think about it? Like for athletes watching, especially up and coming athletes, how important it is to we want you to put everything into your athletics.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got to be obsessed when you play at this kind of level.
Yeah.
It requires that type of dedication.
Absolutely.
But how soon did you start looking at kind of that exit strategy, I guess?
I would say I think it was around my third year when I started getting my courses started and getting that going.
And you played for 5, so in year 3. Got
I was already kind of midway through my career at that point, which I didn't. I thought I would play longer.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So a friend of mine had kind of planted the bug in my ear, and I said, "Oh, okay, makes sense, and I'll think about it." And then I really considered it as a good option. So I didn't really know what else I wanted to do, so I figured I'll give this a shot. And then when the pandemic hit, I jumped into it.
Okay.
Finished. I sort of was like forced to finish because of how so I got into it in late 2020 and haven't stopped.
So it sounds like your ride has been pretty smooth. Was there a period of like, oh, what now? Yes, we've made this commitment and this idea. I want to do real estate. That's great. It's a warm fuzzy. But we know as athletes, like when you play in front of a crowd and the rush of being part of a team and having everything just mapped out for you, I mean, there's no feeling like it.
No.
So how did you bridge that gap? What do you do to stay mentally tough? What do you say keep you, like, are you a journaler, meditator, visualization, goal setting? What do you do?
You got to fake it till you make it. No.
It is kind of true. You just got to keep showing up. I say that all the time.
It's true.
Until you feel confident.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, like for me, am I going to do real estate forever? I don't know. I mean, I'm still fairly new. It's my third year. I'm still...
Who are you with? Just so people...
Umber Realty.
Okay.
So we're a boutique brokerage in Ottawa.
Okay.
We're in Toronto, Vancouver, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I know the people very well, so it felt like the right decision on making such a big transition.
Interesting, because you go from a very scheduled life to an unscheduled life. So how did you deal with time management?
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
I like having some structure.
Yeah, most athletes do.
Yeah, and football's very regimented, right? Like it's, you got meetings at this time, you've got practice at this time, physio, treatment, whatever. Training, et cetera, et cetera. So I was used to having that structure.
Yeah.
Real estate, you have to create your structure. And even then, it's not always structured because you've got people calling you at all hours of the day.
They want to see them when they're available and you got to show a house.
Exactly. So that's, I'm still adjusting to that. That's just, I don't know if you ever really adjust to it. The nice thing about it is that you have a lot of flexibility. You can do stuff like this, right? Most people, it's like you're at a 9 to 5. Like I can't get up and leave and do an interview. Yeah, right.
For sure.
So that part of it is appealing to me. But yeah, you just got to go with the flow. And the transition, I think I've made it seem smoother than it was. But there's been a lot of days where I'm just like, you're frustrated.
Did you have hopes of the NFL?
I mean, I think everyone at some point did. I definitely would have liked to have gotten an opportunity, but I mean, the reality is it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
There's so many guys out there. They're not looking at a 6 foot on a good day defensive tackle. Like I was already undersized for my position to begin with.
Got it.
Over there, I would have been a completely different position.
And what's neat about ET's career, I'm not going to try to say her name, I'm going to butcher it, is for any young athletes watching or parents, if you got young athletes at home, like he started at 12 and ended up winning a Grey Cup. I mean, that's such a short window. So that skill set piece, and then looking for, that a career that can suit. I know some of the other players, like I'm friends with Melissa Lamb and Nigel, and he's got the firefighting thing on the side. So those are some other careers that really help suit an athlete, right? You got the team atmosphere, which is really neat. So what do you do? It sounds like you didn't put, because sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves that we want to be that high level athlete. Yeah. It doesn't seem to me like you ever, like you were very realistic in your head about like what a great accomplishment I made. That would be awesome to get a call from the NFL, but you were very realistic. So you didn't, sometimes I feel like when you have those other athletes that are like, they're just devastated if they don't cross to that line. It doesn't seem like you had that.
I you know what, I think for me, I realized where, I'm a very realistic person, and I knew what my role was when I got to the team. I knew what my role was going to be moving forward, and I accepted it. And all I could do is the best of my abilities.
I love that.
And if that puts me in a position to go further, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah. There's a lot of guys that they look at the CFL, and particularly a lot of Americans. They'll come up here looking at it as a stepping stone to get to the NFL, but not realizing that this is actually legitimate football. It's it's real football.
It is fun too to watch. Fun, what a fun game.
And it caters to different types of athletes. Like the games are very different from down south to here. And some guys, I've seen guys come from down south, they can't do it, right? They're maybe too big, they're not fast enough. Like it's the different field dimensions. There's a lot of different skill sets that are applicable to both leagues.
That's what I always tell athletes. You never know what scouts are looking for as well. You never know what piece of the puzzle that you're going to fit. So you don't have to be the loudest. You don't have to be the flashiest. But it could be work ethic, or they need heart and they need leadership, right, on their team, and they're missing that depth in the room.
Exactly. So, and I didn't like. Canada is different. I can't speak so much on like hockey and your experience, but Canada is obviously not known for football. It's just not our pastime, right?
Good old hockey game.
Yeah, exactly, right? And for me, like I never changed positions. I was always on the defensive line. I would move around.
Until Winnipeg tried to push
Until Winnipeg, yeah. That was actually the second time it happened, but the first time it was like minors and nothing, and didn't work out. But I mean, I've always just been a defensive lineman. That's what I started out as, and that's what I ended as.
Interesting. Yeah. Defensive lineman. Do you think that affects your mindset? Being on the defensive side of things, so you say you're realistic. So you're more. Are you more cautious in your everyday life?
Yes and no.
Or are you a risk taker?
I'll take risks. I think with
calculated risks.
More calculated, I would say. Defensive lineman, it's a very reactionary position.
Oh, interesting.
And defense in general is reactionary because you don't know what. Like you might have an idea as to what play may be coming your way based on the situation, downs, etc. And obviously, film study helps. But you still don't know the time count. You don't like when's the snap happening. What is the play really going to be, right? So offense, they know everything. They know when the ball is being snapped. They know what play is happening, what the routes are going to be, what the run play, whatever it may be. So you're very reactive. And for me, with real estate at least, it's similar in that you don't really know what's going to happen when you put an offer in.
Sorry, honey and kids, I got to go show a house right now.
Exactly. Well, that's literally what it could be like. Yeah. It's very much so like that. It can a lot of fast last minute moves that you have to deal with. So and that catered to my, I guess, reactionary abilities.
So do you goal set, or do you journal? Do you meditate, or how do you stay grounded and in alignment with kind of like and staying true to ET and
I don't journal or meditate per se. I have meditated obviously. For me, training has always been my relief. I've been missing that lately.
Active meditation is a thing.
Yes. Yeah. That's always been, I think, my biggest stress reliever is being able to like get in the gym and do stuff. So, and I still try and train regularly, not as much as I would like to. And I think anyone who's been an athlete can attest that when you do retire, it's hard to like, you want to continue to do what you did, but sometimes your body or your lifestyle just doesn't allow it.
Yeah, so athletes if you are transitioning, just recognize you're going to have a chemical imbalance. The amount of training and the discipline when you are training basically 6 days a week, endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, working on a team sport, immediately if you stop, especially people that are injured or unforeseen circumstances that forces you to hang up the jersey, just recognize there's nothing wrong with you. You are completely normal. You just have to, it takes some time to regulate those hormones again. And staying active, when I did an interview with Pat Woodcock, that was his biggest saving grace, was staying, if you can't figure out what's the next move, just daily movement, even if it's not as intense, is really going to help you stay in that healthy headspace Now, again, that's when you're injured. Were you ever injured?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've had my injuries. And I had an injury. It's funny. Like, right when I retired, my back gave out on me. And it was funny because I always tell people, I'm like, I feel like it was my body saying, all right, I don't have to do this anymore. Like, just like, let's let go.
They say that happens.
Yeah. And so I've been dealing with that for a while. And I've still been able to train. I mean, people always look at me and go, you look like you're still playing. Like, yeah, I probably could. Like, I didn't leave because I couldn't. I left on my own terms. And it was more like a business decision. Like, it just...
Are you supposed to be chubby now? Because
a lot of guys do. Like, I mean, I'm down about maybe 10 pounds for my playing weight. Like, I'm still sitting at 255, 260. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not, like, tiny.
Redblacks, are you coming calling on AT?
You know? No, I mean, you know what? I that's the one thing I always tell people, like, because they always ask, like, well, like, could you not do it anymore? It's like, no, like, it was a decision I made based on the circumstances, and it's a business.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think when people see athletes too, I mean, athletes give us so much hope, and they're like, it's something that they aspire to be, but they don't get the opportunity. So they're like, why would you end it? We're not, you know, they
don't
do
know,
it too.
right?
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. You don't know what the daily
routine
and grind is of being an athlete, and the wear and tear on the body. And for me, it was more of like a risk reward. And as much as I love the game, I realized that there was the monetary aspect of it was starting to be less appealing.
Yep.
And you know, you have kids.
Yep.
I had a kid.
Wife, everything.
Right.
Yep.
These, you know, bills add up. I'm like, I need. And when I retired, we still didn't know if there was going to be a season.
Yeah, because of the pandemic.
Right. So I'm like, I can't risk another year off working, you know, a side job and hoping that 2022 we're gonna have a season.
And that eats at your mental game big time, and like your feeling of like inadequacy, or you go again, you're in a stadium that's packed, and then all of a sudden you're.
It's true.
You don't know. So
you know, it's funny. Like all Italians, I grew up watching Rocky.
Okay.
Right?
We love Rocky.
Love my
kids
Rockies.
And my husband, we love Rocky in this
love
house.
my Rocky. And you know, there is a scene in Rocky 3 where when he fights Clubber Lang, that's his like the enemy of that movie, right? And he's sitting down with Mickey, and he goes like, "What happened?" He goes, "You got civilized." And it's like, yeah, like when an athlete gets civilized, it's sometimes things change. Like you're not. There is something that shifts. And for me, I was still training like I was getting ready for the 2021 season. I was going to the gym 4 times a week. Getting on, you know, running, whatever, lifting heavy. I mean, like, and I was hitting some really solid numbers, but I was at home sitting down 6-8 hours a day on the computer doing, you know, real estate stuff, right? So that transition, you know, from sitting down all day, getting up and trying to go and be an athlete is very weird and hard on the body.
For sure.
And it was like something just said, nope, no more.
Yeah.
So now I'm slowly getting back into shape and moving around and getting my body back to where it needs to be.
This is interesting. It's not really transitioning to life of sports, but it is, because I think as a community and families, we need to support our athletes when they make this decision, because it's not an easy one for an athlete. Did anyone ever kind of give you grief about, well, you mentioned a few comments, but like, did you ever feel kind of some people gave you a little bit of pushback that really had no right doing so?
You know what?
Or they were supported?
Everyone was, for the most part, fairly supportive, and I didn't really go on like social media and post anything. Like, I'm not a big social media guy, so I didn't go like, oh, I'm retiring, and didn't get a lot of. It was more like people would come out of the woodwork and say, "Hey, man, congratulations, great playing with you," or you know, great career, whatever. There were a couple people who were like, "Oh, why did you walk away?" And they were just kind of curious because they, you know, you're still young. Like I was in my prime. I'm like, this is what it was. It's just life happens and you have to deal with it. So, and I was okay with it. I mean, there's obviously always that party that wants to compete, and you want to get out there.
You just got to learn to put it in a different arena.
You have to learn to put it in a different arena. And I figured, you know what, something right now that's providing for me, I can't walk away from it right now. So I need to take a risk and see what happens. So,
I love that.
Yeah.
So what would you say, you know, if there is an athlete, and I do know there are some athletes that are struggling in silence, what would be your last piece of advice, you know, if you are going through that transition to life after sports? What would you say?
Talk to someone who's been there. Right? I mean, you're not the only one. And don't think that you're making a mistake. If you don't feel like, because that's when injuries happen. If you're not all in anymore, and that's for me, I realized I might not be all in anymore. And that's when you can get injured. Yeah. And that can set you back even further, both physically and mental health wise. So talk to people who've been there.
I love that.
Don't worry about if the job that you're moving into if that's going to be your forever career. It might not be. You might have several different jobs before you make that decision. So for me, I liked what I was doing. I figured, okay, I'll give it a shot. if I'm not doing it in 10 years, that's fine. Who knows? I might be doing something else.
I love it. What a great way to end a great conversation. Make sure you're talking to someone. Get out there and listen to your body. Your body doesn't lie. It's very intuitive. But thank you, E.T., for being here.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you. Tiger Talk Thursday. And next week, we've got some amazing athletes coming your way. The lineup, we're already booking into July. So get ready. There's an amazing set of athletes coming your way. So thank you for contributing to this series. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.